My name is Samuel Carter, apprentice printer on Market Street, a few blocks from the Delaware River in Philadelphia. In the summer of 1793, I was 21 years old and certain that I lived at the center of the world. You can stand beside me now. It is early August. The sun has just begun to rise over the masts in the harbor. The light touches the river first. Thick, unmoving water that glows like tarnished brass. The air already feels swollen, as if the city has drawn in a breath it cannot release. You taste salt, tar, and something sweeter underneath. Rotting coffee beans fermenting on the docks. Molasses leaking into cracks between cobblestones. 6 weeks ago, we called this heat a blessing, a sign of prosperity. Ships from the Caribbean, heavy with sugar and refugees fleeing the fires of Saint-Domingue, crowd our wharves. Merchants boast that no European capital can rival our ambition. Congress meets here. The president himself walks our streets. We believed we had apparalled. The deported was cursed by the 15th second of this story, though we do not yet know it. The curse has already. Ifan Papua, somewhere behind a shuttered window near Water Street. A sailor lies awake in the dark. Though sweat soaks his sheets. He thinks it is a passing fever. By nightfall, his eyes will turn the color of spoiled parchment, and by October, 1 in 10 of us will be dead. I did not know that yet. I only knew the flies were thick that morning, thicker than I had ever seen. They clung to the rims of water barrels and rose in black clouds when disturbed. The mosquitoes hummed in the alleys behind my boarding house. We cursed them casually, as one curses summer itself. We did not understand that the sound was not nuisance. It was an army. 6 weeks before the city breaks, life appears orderly. From my print shop window, I watch carriages rattle toward the State House. George Washington is in residence. Thomas Jefferson lodges nearby. The experiment called the United States feels fragile but luminous, like glass still warm from the furnace. But step away from the grand avenues. Walk with me down Dock Street. The gutters are in trenches. Slop buckets are vasa. Empty chamber pots spill into alleys where pigs root through refuse. Butchers discard offal into the same channels that carry rainwater toward the river. Wells sit a few feet from privies. In the August heat, the city exhales rot. We have grown used to it. Commerce blinds us. Since the slave uprising in Saint-Domingue, what some are beginning to call the Haitian Revolution, ships have arrived heavy with refugees, white planters, free people of color, enslaved men and women forced aboard in chaos. They bring stories of fire and machetes. They bring trauma. They bring survival. And though none of us can see it, they bring yellow fever. We blame the coffee. That is important. At the docks sit mountains of spoiled beans from the West Indies, left to bake in the sun. Foul syrup seeps into the soil. Influential men insist that miasma, poisoned air rising from rot, is the culprit. The stench becomes our villain. We speak of vapors, of corrupted atmosphere. No one speaks of mosquitoes breeding quietly in rain barrels behind elegant homes. By late July, the heat becomes tyrannical. Day after day, above 90 degrees, the air presses down on your shoulders like a physical weight. Even the memovnats, you lie awake, windows open, listening to the high whine near your ear. A week before the panic, I set type for a small notice. Fever reported near the waterfront. It is printed without alarm. Illness is common in summer. Malaria visits us often enough. We are not medieval peasants fearing divine wrath. We are enlightened citizens of a republic. 3 days later, the tone shifts. Patients develop jaundice. Their eyes yellow first, then their skin. They become to complain of pounding headaches and back pain so severe they cannot stand upright. The fever climbs relentlessly. I see one of them myself. His name is Elijah Ward, a cooper who lives 2 doors from my boarding house. I pass him on the steps one afternoon. He grips the railing. Breath shallow, just the heat. He mutters, The next morning, his wife sends for a physician. Within 48 hours, Elijah begins to vomit black. Not dark brown, not red, black. Thick as tar. The smell lingers in the stairwell for days. That is the moment the word spreads. Yellow fever. You hear it whispered first, then spoken aloud with dread. The term has haunted port cities before. New Orleans, Charleston. But never like this. Never in the capital of the United States. Dr. Benjamin Rush becomes the city's most visible warrior. I glimpse him once. Coat damp with sweat, moving briskly between houses, as if marching through battle. He believes firmly in bloodletting, in purging the corrupted humors. Patients are bled repeatedly, giant ounces and 20 more. Some recover, many do not. The soundscape of the city changes. Church bells toll more frequently. Carriage wheels roll at strange hours of the night. Doors remain shut during daylight. Friends cross the street to avoid one another. You begin to measure time not by days of the week, but by funerals. By mid-August, 100 are dead. Then, 500. And still the heat does not break. The destabilization is not only biological, it is psychological. The confidence of a young nation begins to flicker. If disease can strike here, at the very heart of the Republic, what does that say about our grand experiment? One evening, as the sun bleeds orange into the Delaware, I stand at the river's edge. The water does not move. Mosquitoes skim its surface like flecks of ash. Behind me, the city hums with fear too stubborn to name. Ahead of me, invisible in the thick summer air, the true cause multiplies silently. And for the first time in my life, I understand that a capital city, no matter how proud, is only wood, brick, and flesh. And flesh is fragile. Turning point. By the end of August, we no longer ask whether this fever will pass. We begin on to down he will shoot. By the first week of September, the fever is no longer a rumor. It is the weather. It is the rhythm of our days. I mark the calendar in my room. September 3rd, 1793. 3 weeks since Elijah Ward died. Nearly a month since the first whispers from the docks. The death toll climbs past 1,000, and something inside the city begins to rot faster than the bodies. At first, we try to maintain civility. Neighbors leave bread at one another's doors. Clergymen visit the sick. Physicians argue publicly about treatment, but still make their rounds. Yet fear is a patient sculptor. It reshapes behavior slowly, invisibly. You feel it in the way people look at each other. A cough becomes an accusation. A flushed face becomes evidence. Families with means flee first. I watch carriages roll north along Germantown Road, piled high with furniture, silver, mattresses tied precariously with rope. Women prados, untrendias sentidant, beams death if close to their mouths. Children stare wide-eyed at the city receding behind them. Within days, the exodus becomes a flood. Even President George Washington departs from Mount Vernon. Congress adjourns. Federal offices shutter their doors. The Tratici of the Republic, so carefully assembled, simply lifts itself out of the Capitol. I remember the morning the news reached Market Street. It's temporary. Someone insists inside the print shop, but his voice trembles. If the man who crossed the Delaware can abandon Philadelphia, what message does that send to the butcher, the dock worker, the widow with 3 children? Woo, stay and die? Or flee and carry death with you? The roads choke with refugees. Surrounding towns erect barricades. Armed men question travelers, inspecting faces for yellow eyes, listening for the weakness in a stranger's voice. Those suspected of illness are turned back at gunpoint. I see one family return at dusk, their wagon lighter than before. The father walks beside it now. The small bundle wrapped in linen that had lain in the back is gone. No one asks where they buried the child. Inside the city, trust collapses. Boarding houses empty overnight. Tenants slip away without paying. To the bait examine Gosha chases center earlier. Kaduathate ansite shapoya petibetier, fubutier cadres desultua. The tita gagedi to sacie tuta amitres sedanzian dawn. To me get that to kiss the Peter Boss to go back to 38 to be to can be budget to chiki to say Saban for this word geek, huh? The wealthy Akivi Gudra. The poor accuse. Who's the wealthy of cowardice? Immigrants are blamey Shablenda. Refugees from Saint Domingue are whispered about, as if they themselves exhale contagion. And then the ugliest rumor takes root. Yay. A claim spreads that black Philadelphians are immune to the fever. No evidence, no science, only desperation. Leaders of the Free African Society, among them Richard Allen and Abulabundan Dedigadons, step forward when others flee. They organize nurses. They carry the sick. They dig graves when white gravediggers refuse. I see them in the streets. Vinegar-soaked cloths tied across their faces, moving from house to house, while others bolt their doors. They are not immune. They die, Mavi. In great Titanic man number. Yet when the crisis deepens, accusations follow. Pamphlets circulate claiming black nurses overcharge or steal from the dying. Fear seeks a target. It always does. Meanwhile, Benjamin Rush doubles down on bloodletting. His conviction hardens as mortality rises. He believes the fever is inflammatory. That aggressive purging will save lives. I watch men carried into tonight. Tutujo seduces his temporary hospital and emerge pale as wax, too weak to stand. Some recover and praise him publicly. Others die within hours, their families unsure whether the cure hastened the end. Medical factions form like political parties. Newspapers argue whether the disease is imported or born from local filth, whether contagion passes from person to person or being gives from mumwizma. Each theory carries moral weight. If the disease is imported, then blame. If it rise from filth, then blame the city's poor. If it is contagious, then by mid-September, the daily death toll surpasses 100. The sound at night changes, not just the rattle of death carts, but silence between them. Entire blocks grow quiet because no one remains alive inside. I pass a house on 3rd Street where chalk marks the door. Inside, a mother and 2 children lie dead in separate rooms. The father fled, Elisa. Perhaps he believed distance would save him. Perhaps he could not bear to watch. In my boarding house, we eat separately now. No shared platters, no lingering conversation. Each of us listens inwardly for signs. A chill in the spine, a tightening in the stomach. On September 18th, I wake with a headache. It is slight, ordinary, yet my hands shake as I touch my forehead. You begin to doubt your own body. Is that warmth fever or imagination? Is that nausea dread or the first step toward black vomit? I survive the day. Many do not. Commerce collapses. Ships sit idle. Markets thin. The wealthy countryside estates that once promised safety now report cases of fever among refugees who carried it unknowingly beyond city limits. The illusion of escape dissolves. Philadelphia begins to resemble the plague engravings I once saw of 1348 London, though ours is not bubonic swelling, but yellowed skin and hemorrhaging stomachs. The pattern is eerily familiar. Isolation, suspicion, moral panic, civilization. Proofs then, not absent, but thin. And as September wanes, something darker settles over us than the heat. It is not merely fear of death. It is the realization that we may not care for one another when death arrives. Turning point. By the final week of September, the fever no longer tests our medicine. It attests our humanity. September 25th, 1793. The city no longer feels governed. It feels abandoned. I walk past the State House. Its brick facade still proud. Its windows dark. Only weeks ago, this building pulsed with debate and ambition. Now it stands like an empty shell, as if the spirit of the Republic has vacated the body. President George Washington is gone. The cabinet dispersed. Congress adjourned. The federal courts silent. What remains of authority and city and municipal overwhelmed, underfunded. Gasping. We once believed power lived in buildings. Now we learn it lives in people, and people can flee. The machinery that keeps a city alive begins to fail in sequence. First, commerce. Merchants close their shops. Imports rot on ships whose crews have died or deserted. Insurance collapses under claims. Credit evaporates. A man who yesterday extended loans with confidence now refuses to shake your hand. Then sanitation. The usual sweepers of streets fall ill. Trash accumulates. Dead animals lie where they collapse. The sal intensifis, thick enough to taste. Lime is scattered in desperate handfuls across intersections. Vinegar barrels stand at corners, so citizens may soak handkerchiefs before continuing on. But there are not enough hands. Gravediggers die. Carpenters die. The men who build coffins succumb faster than they can assemble them. By the last week of September, bodies are wrapped in sheets and I hear the wheels before I see them. The dull wooden rattle over cobblestones. Bring out your dead. The phrase is less formal than in medieval chronicles, but the meaning is identical. Mass graves are dabapsvi. I stand once at a distance and watch as 5 bodies are lowered without ceremony. No priest, no family, only efficiency. The Republic has reduced death to logistics. Dr. Benjamin Rush continues his campaign of bleeding and purging. He writes letters defending his methods, convinced history will vindicate him. Some physicians accuse him of killing more than he saves. Others follow his example. But medicine is not the only system fracturing. The Postal Service slows. Newspapers shrink to thin sheets, filled almost entirely with death tallies, and advertisements for patent remedies. Room has outrun print. One day the fever is said to be waning. The next, that it has doubled in ferocity. Church attendance collapses. Faith does not vanish, but gathering does. On September 30th, I record in my notebook, 119 deaths reported in a single day. That is nearly 5 every hour. You begin to think in hours. At noon, someone is alive. By nightfall, they are not. The Free African Society continued to choose its labor. Moving through neighborhoods others years refused to enter. Absalom Jones and Richard Allen coordinate burial crews, nurses, supplies. Without them, the city would drown entirely. Yet even this fragile scaffolding strains. On October 3rd, I am summoned to help carry a printer's apprentice from Chestnut Street. He is younger than I am. His skin glows yellow beneath the sun. When we lift him, his head lolls unnaturally. Black stains crust the corner of his mouth. His mother does not weep. She stands rigid. As if grief itself requires energy she no longer possesses. That night, alone in my room, I realize something colder than fear. If I fall ill, there may be no one left to carry me. Power is not only presidents and congresses. It is the quiet assurance that someone will answer your knock. That assurance has evaporated. By early October, an estimated 20,000 people, nearly half the city, have fled. Of the 50,000 who lived here in spring, perhaps 25,000 remain. Of those thousands are sick. Philadelphia, capital of the United States, resembles a besieged fortress whose defenders are dying inside its walls. And then until last, nature shifts. October that brings it to wind, not cold, just different. A subtle easing of the suffocating heat. We notice it the way a drowning man notices the first inch of air above water. Deaths remain high, but they do not rise further. October 18th, fewer than 100 reported. October 22nd, 70. We dare not speak hope aloud. Then demands the morning of October 27th. I wake before dawn. The room feels sharp, unfamiliar. I step outside barefoot and feel it immediately. The bite against my skin. Frost. It glitters along the edges of Market Street like crushed it. As to glass. The Delaware exhales mist. The air is clean in a way I have not experienced for months. The mosquitoes are gone. We do not know that is the reason. We only know that within days, the fever's grip loosens. New cases decline. The black vomit appears less frequently. By early November, the death carts no longer make nightly rounds. Nearly 5,000 are dead, 1 in 10. The proportion rivals the devastation of Europe's Black Death centuries earlier. Yet ours lasted scarcely 3 months. The government returns cautiously. Offices reopen. President Washington eventually resumes residence. Streets are srebnai. Trade resumes hesitantly, but something fundamental has cracked. We have seen how swiftly governance can vanish, how thin the veneer of order becomes under biological assault, how a capital city can be reduced to a field hospital and graveyard in a single summer. The frost has killed the mosquitoes, but it has not restored innocence. November 12th, 1793. The frost has come and gone twice now. The mornings bite. Smoke rises from chimneys instead of rot from gutters. The fever has nearly vanished, but the silence it leaves behind is louder than the death carts ever were. I walk through neighborhoods that once throbbed with noise. Windows are open again, shop signs rehung. The flag of the United States flutters above public buildings, as though nothing extraordinary occurred. Yet you feel it. Che is standing beside me. Spaces where voices used to be. At the print shop, we compile the final tallies. The number hovers near 5,000 dead, out of roughly 50,000 inhabitants. Entire households erased. Apprenticeships ended. Businesses without heirs. Streets renamed in memory rather than celebration. The government has returned. President George Washington resumes his duties. Congress resumed. Speeches are delivered about resilience and providence. Official language leans toward optimism, but privately, we know better. The fever has exposed structural fractures beneath our young republic. First, sanitation. For decades, we tolerated open sewers, shallow wells, and stagnant docks because commerce outweighed caution. Now committees form to debate drainage, street cleaning, water systems. Proposals circulate for a municipal waterworks. An audacious idea suggesting that public health is not merely personal responsibility but civic obligation. The epidemic plants a radical thought in American soil. That government may be responsible for preventing disease. Second, Dr. Benjamin Rush publishes defenses of his bloodletting. Critics publish rebuttals. The profession fractures publicly. For the first time, many citizens question whether authority in medicine should rest on tradition alone. The debate will echo for decades. It will shape American medical education, hospital organization, and the slow shift from humoral theory toward empirical science. But in 1793, all we know is this. We watched treatments fail in plain sight. Third, race and memory. Of their members, the Free African Society, led by Absalom Jones and Richard Allen, kept the city from complete collapse. They nursed the sick, buried the abandoned organized relief, and yet, as the fever fades, accusations circulate, claiming profiteering, misconduct, exaggeration. I attend a meeting where Allen speaks calmly, firmly, documenting names, hours. He refuses to let history distort the record. In that room, I understand something Crisis reveals character, but memory decides whose character survives. Philadelphia rebuilds quickly on the surface. Trade resumes. Ships return to the Delaware. Immigrants can the frost that killed the mosquitoes also molds the illusion that geography grants immunity. American in Athens has learned that it is mortal. Years later, Engineers will complete a permanent waterworks system on the Schuylkill River, one of the first in the nation. Streets will be paved more systematic. And waste removal will improve, not perfectly, not immediately, but 1793 will linger in every discussion of public health. As for me, I keep a ledger of names. Elijah Ward, the printer's apprentice from Chestnut Street. Mrs. Talbot. The cooper's wife who survived, but never again opened her shutters in summer. The frost saved us, yes. Modern physicians will eventually discover that mosquitoes carried the virus, that heat sustained them, that cold destroyed them. But knowledge arrives too late for the dead. On certain August evenings, even in years afterward, when the air grows thick and unmoving, I hear that phantom rattle of wheels. The Republic survived. But survival is not the same as innocence. We learned that leadership can flee, that neighbors can hesitate, that science can falter, that prejudice can bloom faster than compassion. Meant we learned something else. Quieter, more enduring. That ordinary citizens, without title or power, can hold a city together when institutions collapse. The summer of 1793 lasted scarcely 3 months, yet it proved that the New World was not shielded from Old World nightmares. Disease crossed the Atlantic with trade and revolution. It thrived in he. And it waited patiently for the right conditions. You stand with me now on Arcot Street as winter settles in. Is Klein. The river moves again. Life resumes its confident rhythm. But beneath the cobblestones lie 5,000 reminders. The plague never truly disappears. It changes shape. It studies our habits. It waits for heat. And when the air grows thick once more, we will remember the summer Philadelphia turned yellow.